See if I just need to pause before I just start going into things.
Yeah, don't spill the beans before it's time to spill the beans. They can only be spilled once.
Spill the beans once. Well, do you know any odd laws in Kansas?
Is there something about a gun in Wichita? There was okay. I think there's a law on the books that says if you're approaching downtown Wichita from a certain direction, you're supposed to get off your horse, take out your shotgun or your rifle, I guess, and shoot it once in the air to signal that you have arrived to Wichita.
Interesting.
Yeah.
In Butler County, well, actually, I don't know if it's in Butler County, but Butler County Sheriff's Office does these Fun Fact Fridays. Here's a good one. Your local law enforcement has an important reminder. It is illegal to hunt whales in Kansas. Yes, you read that right. Despite being in the middle of the country with no coastline in sight, our dedication to protecting these magnificent sea creatures knows no bounds. Please adhere to the following guidelines. No harpooning in your backyard pools. Leave your snorkels at home when visiting the local lake. Avoid any whale hunting expeditions in your wheat fields. We're proud to say that Kansas remains 100% whale hunt free.
Yeah, things I didn't know, and now I do.
Yeah.
That's why we're here. It's to answer questions.
To answer the questions that you may have.
Welcome back to Ask a Kansan, a podcast where we are visiting with Kansans about their lives and just trying to learn about what it's like to live here.
Yeah. Today we have a really special guest, Chris Goodson. She is the director of the McPherson Housing Coalition. And she came to us, actually, she heard about the podcast and she's like, oh my gosh, I want to be on. And I was like, sweet, cool, let's do it. And
love that.
Just the passion that she has in this interview is oh, yeah. You can feel it. Mm-hmm. I hope it translates to when people listen. So
yeah, and I think she's solving a pretty big societal need in a fairly new and innovative way, and can be applied all over the place. So very, very exciting that this is happening in our backyard.
Yeah. So without further ado, here is our interview with Chris. So you say you're not from Kansas. Where are you originally from?
California.
When did you move to Kansas?
Right after high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
What got you here?
So my parents separated, and we had family here in Kansas, so that's how we got here.
Okay, that seems to be a trend for our guests. Is
really?
Yeah, their family is originally from here or has family here.
Yeah,
and something in life brought them here. So it was the same with Leslie last time around. So, what's kind of the biggest culture shock from going from California to Kansas?
Well, it's funny, when I was 11 years old, we came to visit my cousins in Kansas, and I was like, who in their right mind would want to live here, right? There was no freeways. There was no big restaurants. There was there was nothing. Especially back in the 70s, there was nothing. And I was like, there's nothing here. So it was a big shock going from a big city. So I grew up in Bakersfield and then the Valley. I don't know if you've heard of the Valley. Yeah. So I grew up in those two places. So anything you could possibly need was there. But what I've come to appreciate all these years from my 11-year-old self was Kansans really care about each other. That's what I love so much about Kansas is that if I need something for the nonprofit, people are lining up. What do you need? What can I get for you? If somebody's fighting cancer, we have a situation in McPherson where a mother and a daughter are fighting cancer. And the whole town is rallied. Mm-hmm. I mean, whatever they need, finances, a place to live, support, letters, anything that they need, that's what I love about it. So even though at first it was a shock coming here and thinking, oh my goodness, this place is And then at 18, I moved here and fell in love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just the city. It's not just McPherson.
It's not just McPherson, but
it's everywhere around in the Midwest. That's what I fell in love with.
Yeah.
That my dad moved here from California to live with us about 10 years ago. He lived with us until he passed away, and he said, "Chris, why are people so nice?" I mean, he would go to the grocery store and somebody would buy his groceries, or he'd be in line to get a coffee and somebody would pay for his coffee. And a couple times he would crash his scooter, and like 4 cars would stop, pick him up, make sure he was okay, make sure he's like, "What is wrong with these people?" I said, "Dad, we really care about each other, and we're not fighting for resources here. We still have people in need. We help them every day, but it's just an honor to be here, quite honestly."
What got you interested in kind of the like nonprofit helping people kind of realm? Like what'd you do before on the McPherson Housing Coalition? Like,
well, we were raised to help other people. That was just a part of who we were growing up. Anytime there was something, we volunteered. My parents were my mom was a Girl Scout leader. My dad coached all my brother's sports. So we've always been my parents always stepped in to help, no matter what it was. I remember my mom said one time they delivered groceries to a family that was in need, and just a lot of different things. So we were raised that way, and I've tried really hard to raise my kids that way as well. So it was a natural part. When I see a problem, I'm going to try to figure it out. And if I can't figure it out, then it's big enough that we got to do something.
Tell me about the McPherson Housing Coalition. Can you give me some background of because you started this, right? You and
me and some other people,
yeah.
Yes. So I'm a real estate appraiser. That's what I do. I appraise in 5 counties, including Salina. And I started seeing some things in McPherson County especially where people were having space heaters plugged in to try to keep their homes warm. They were usually rental properties and just really substandard housing. There was a particular family that was trying to buy a home for $25,000. I got called in to do that appraisal, and I walked into the house, and I was horrified. There was holes in the floor that the child could have fallen into the basement. There was wires hanging from the ceiling, and I was like, so I called the bank, and I said, "There's no way you're going to loan money on this." When it was a $25,000 deal, I already knew it was a problem. But so I called some places that I knew of, some grants I knew, and they said, "Chris, this is too far gone." But this is all that family could afford because everybody in the mobile home park where they lived was being evicted. So this was in 2007, 2008. They had, the park was in terrible condition, so they were going to just evict everybody, and they owned their trailer. They had nowhere to go, and I said, enough is enough. We have to figure this out. How can we build affordable housing for families so we don't find ourselves in these situations? And it's really snowballed because we have a shelter now, one of the first non-congregate emergency shelters, which of course means individual little homes in the country. It was the first one, so we were pretty proud of that. And so I said a long time ago, I'm never going to run a shelter. Never say never, because that's when things start to snowball. But that's kind of how it started. We just started seeing things as a group. We're like, we have to do something. This homelessness is getting ridiculous. And a lot of the time, people, it's not their fault. I mean, it's not their fault that they got evicted. It wasn't that they themselves had done anything wrong. It was just that the mobile home was in such bad shape that the park was in such bad shape. I mean, they had all kinds of terrible things going on. So that's what happened there. They had to evict everybody, and they had nowhere to go. And they both had jobs. We're not talking about people that aren't working.
How many staff do you have currently with the McPherson Housing Coalition?
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 5 of us.
How did that I'm really intrigued on how you built this coalition and even just staff in the last 17 years, right?
Yeah, 17 years.
because that's a feat in itself of keeping this alive for 17 years and building up to where you have enough funds and grants to keep a staff. How has that challenge been?
So how we did it was because I own my own company, I put the Housing Coalition in my building.
Oh, okay.
So that there was we tried to keep overhead to to nothing. So my mom and I were the free staff for a long, long time. My mom is she's an appraiser, but she was a chief financial officer in multi-million-dollar hospital. So the woman is brilliant. And so she did it for free for a very long time. I did it for free for a really long time. We just believed in the mission so strongly that we were willing to do that. So that's how it started. And then we would bring in interns and we bring in different people. And what changed, we got an emergency solutions grant. And that's when we started having money to start paying staff.
Wow.
And it just built from there. But we did things for free for a long time. And I think anybody that's listening, if you have a heart for something, you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. You're going to do it for free. You're going to do whatever it takes. I mean, it's been 17 years. And in the last 5, I'd say, we've really taken off and really making an impact. But if it's what you're supposed to do and you have a heart for it, it's not work.
That's a really strong point. So tell me about Oak Harbor Cottages. How did that really come to play? Because you had that land for a while, right? And you're trying to figure out what to do with it. Can you tell me kind of how that came to be or what it is, I guess, for our audience?
So, yeah, it's so tricky to try to explain some of the stuff because it just sort of happened and it sort of evolved, really organically. What happened was we had a piece of ground and we had tried to do a couple projects and the grants kept getting turned down or whatever. And then we figured out that we really needed some kind of a shelter. But I didn't like the idea of a typical shelter where you have one big room or families have a room over here and then they have a kitchen where everybody uses. It's not great for kids. And a lot of times they separate families. So I said, whatever we do, this is not what we're doing. So Jamie Odell, who's sadly passed away since then, her and I really got together and started to put this thing on paper. She was a designer, and so she kind of drew some plans up, and we started talking about it. And we're like, how in the world are we going to do this? Because there's no money for this. They will fund you money to do a typical shelter, but they will not pay for a non-congregate emergency shelter. So we had to literally go out into the community and say, here's the deal. We need 10 of these. We have families in need in the community, and we would go to a church and say, and we need you to pay for it, and we need you to build it. And they said, we're there. We will do that for you. I mean, you know how incredible that is anyways? And now, because of that, HUD has been to our place and said, we are going to allow this. So now, if a community is wanting to build exactly what we have, they can get funding from HUD. And they said, you did this. How? I said, we did this through the churches. A community effort through the churches. Businesses started coming on board. We have all the electrical components were donated, all the plumbing components, the flooring, the siding was all given to us. It's the most expensive siding you can get in the country, all donated.
Wow.
So it was an incredible, incredible thing. I can't even express to you how amazing it was. I would literally sometimes go on the site, stand back and watch all these different churches working hand in hand. I mean, it's just, it should make you have chills because watching it was incredible. And I can't possibly explain to you how amazing it was.
Could you describe like what one of these units looks like?
Sure. So they're about 460 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and then the living room, tiny little dining area, and the kitchen is open. So it's kind of like a box sort of, and then you have the bedrooms on one side and the kitchen, living, and dining on the other side. They're all fully furnished. So anything you want, couches, they have little couches in them, dishes, blankets, pillows, so all the bathroom things.
Go in.
Yes,
be at home.
They can move right in. We have a food pantry. There's a basement on site. There's a food pantry down there, and they can go shopping for the things that they need until they can get back on their feet and take those groceries to their little house and be able to feed their kids. They get to sit down with mom and dad and the child. what our goal is that we want kids to say, I got to live there, not that I had to live there. I want people to be proud that they were there, that it was I get really choked up. We want this to be a turning point for these people. We have a 75% success rate with everybody that's gone through our cottages. 75%, which is unheard of in poverty, people in poverty and homelessness. So when we didn't talk about this, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of you or not, but so basically a family comes to us. We have one lady right now, actually, we've had people that are fleeing domestic violence. So they go talk to a domestic violence counselor, because that's not what we do. Once we know it's safe, we move them into the home. Then they meet with our case manager, who helps them develop a plan. What do you need to be able to get yourself back on your feet? I don't care what it is. Mental health, legal. Sometimes parents don't have legal custody of their kids because they were never married to the other parent. And so there's no child support, because how can there be? There's no record of all these things. We take them through job training if they need that. We encourage them to get their high school diploma. A lot of our people don't have high school diplomas. Whatever that is whatever's missing for that family. So let's say they need, I'm trying to think of all the different things that they might need, but there's just anything that they need. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Child care. That's a big one. That's a huge one. We can pay for that. So whatever they need, we provide that for them through a grant that we have, to get them back on their feet and then help them move on. Now, they can only stay there for 90 days. They can't be there any longer than 90 days. However, we are building and I don't know,
Yeah, no, keep going.
So we are building a permanent supportive housing complex. So that's across the street. Again, they're tiny homes, but they are a little bigger. There's 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, so they're obviously a little bigger. They can move from the cottages after their 90 days is up. Usually they've got a little money saved, and they've got a new job, and all these cool things are happening. They've moved forward with their mental health. So you move them into the next phase, and they can stay there as long as they income qualify. They get to keep their case manager. They get to keep their mental health provider. They get to keep working with whatever it is that they're doing and stabilize so they don't end up back where they were. And then the next goal, obviously, is we want to move them into another rental or home ownership.
Wow.
It's amazing the amount of detail you guys have thought of through this process of just, getting them out of those situations, putting them in this kind of pathway for success, especially on like the legal, the health, the things that not everyone has access to.
Yeah.
Do you get grants for those programs, like the legal, the health, or like
we have a tenant-based rental assistance. Okay. So we have a lot of grants that cover all the different things. So we do a lot of public speaking on how to layer grants to make all of this work. Because honestly, I think that if this could go nationwide, across the country, across the world, you would end homelessness right now.
Oh, wow.
If you could put all these pieces together, you would end it. Because there would be no reason. You get people what they need, you get them stabilized, and then here you go.
So 75% success rate, what does that mean exactly?
So that means they stay housed within at least a year after you've helped them.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have a story that stands out to you the most of someone that you've helped?
Oh, my goodness. There's been so many. We had one where the family had a fire and they ended up homeless. It wasn't their fault. They rented a house, so we moved them in. The kids were autistic.
Oh.
And so they were already really keyed up. And somebody that we knew that was their coach said, it's unbelievable how much those kids have calmed down since you've put them into the cottages. And then they both got really great jobs, and off they went.
This episode is sponsored by Renaissance Cafe. Serving Northern Italian cuisine prepared with a fresh, contemporary influence, the Renaissance Cafe is one of Kansas's favorite restaurants. Whether you're planning a romantic dinner date, a family celebration, or an intimate meal with friends, the Renaissance provides a unique dining experience with an old-world atmosphere. Open Thursday through Saturday evenings, the Renaissance Cafe is located just south of Salina in Assyria, Kansas. Visit renaissancecafeassyria.com to book your reservation today.
Another one, they were about ready to break. Their marriage was about ready to fall apart, and he ended up getting a really, really good job. And they moved and bought a house. They literally went from the cottages to buying a home.
Oh, wow.
Within a year, because they needed that stability to be able to get back on their feet, get everything figured out. What do they need? And it was a little tight because I think they had like maybe 3 kids, and the cottages are pretty small. But it worked. We made it work. And then they were able to go from homelessness to homeownership, which is actually our mission statement. Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you approached this with like a really low level of shaming them. Is that fair to say?
There's no shaming because you don't know everybody's story. I mean, I have my story. You probably have your stories. We all have a story of something that possibly happened to us that might have been traumatic. And we all handled it differently based on our parenting. So you could have 2 different people with the exact same trauma, but somebody got support and somebody didn't. And so these people went on to do incredible things, and these people are stuck. And so that is not their fault whatsoever. So we care and love people. We don't want to do any kind of shaming. I mean, we expect you to do your part. Mm-hmm. When you move into the cottages, you're not going to just flop there and do nothing. We expect you to work your program that you've agreed to. We expect you to do those things. So, yeah, no shaming.
Did you get any type of pushback or anything when starting the cottages?
So we did. I got yelled at a couple times in the middle of the street. Well, imagine where you're living, and next thing you know, you're hearing there's a homeless shelter going to be in your neighborhood. I don't know that I would have been too excited about it either. But now that they see it, people love it.
It's so cute. I drive by it every day.
Yeah, isn't it cute?
To take my daughter to daycare.
We want it to be the most beautiful place you've ever seen. We've been working with an artist actually to put some art, some sculptures on the site that'll be kid friendly. We haven't found the money for that yet. I'm not trying to get anybody to give me it, but we haven't been able.
But if you would like to donate,
yeah, we would like. But we want to put some really cool art. She's got some really great ideas of some art for it. We want it to be just beautiful. We want more flowers. We want more things to be on it, but it takes time and money. So we're still working on that. But it has to be incredible. I want people to just drive by and say, wow, what is that? Yeah. Because people don't know what it is.
No, people have no idea what it is.
People have no idea what it is.
When I told my husband, who, I guess, backstory, my husband is on the board of the McPherson Housing Coalition. I don't think we've ever said that. But when I told him, I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, do you know Chris? And he's like, yeah, I know Chris. I was like, yeah, and I think we're going to talk about the tiny homes he goes, those aren't tiny homes. I'm like, then what are they? He goes, do you even know what the McPherson Housing Coalition is? And I'm like, I'm not going to lie, sweetie. I don't. I know you're on the board. I'm sorry, Chris, but I did my homework.
I'm sort of used to it, so it's fine.
It's just that, like, these were built when I started working for the city of McPherson. Mm-hmm. They a few years ago, they started being built. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Still working for the city, I still have no idea what they were.
You didn't know what it was. Yeah.
So sorry about that.
No, it's okay. And I don't know what else we can do. We've literally been on all 3 big stations. We've been on national magazines. We're still getting calls from all over the country. We flew to D.C. because they wanted to hear about them.
Oh, wow.
So we went to Washington, D.C. and said, here's the deal. If you do this, you're going to end this. And it doesn't cost a ton of money. It's pretty simple. You just need to put all these layers together. And so I will say, too, I mean, it was pretty complicated sort of putting it all together, but I went back to school and got my master's, and that was my project, was the Oak Harbor Cottages.
Oh, wow.
So I have a business degree and an organizational leadership degree and on my master's degree. So business is really my thing, not social work. And I've just learned a lot about the social work side of it just for people that work for me or I have friends that I have. And in my mind, it was like, okay, this is how we need to put this together.
Want to spread your organization's message across Kansas? Consider becoming a sponsor. Ask a Kansan has a unique focus on Kansas and its people. By sponsoring our podcast, your organization can reach people from Canarado to Kansas City, Wichita to Washington, and all the great places in between. We have a variety of sponsorship packages available to fit your budget and needs. For more information, visit askakansan.com/sponsorships or call us at 785-571-9507.
Do you think having more of that business sense rather than social work sense has brought you to the success of where you are now?
Absolutely. I mean, with Mary's CFO, I mean, yes. Because most of the time, you have a lot of people that want to do good, but they have no idea what the financial side needs to look like.
Yeah.
And if you don't have both pieces, which a lot of times they don't have, it's very difficult.
Very.
I'm obsessed with tiny homes and,
Oh, you are?
and pocket neighborhoods. Yeah,
Yes.
Don't get me started. But one of the things I have heard and have read and haven't experienced myself, but is how these kinds of housing projects are really good at community building. And so can you just talk about like the relationships between the people in the different houses and, you know, what does that community look like?
So basically, we made the porches face each other so that they could see each other and know that they are all going through this at the same time. Now, the community is not quite as much at the Oak Harbor Cottages because they're only there for 90 days. So it's not a lot of time for them to build community. But our goal is on the Sutherland Estates to start really building community with those people, with the families that are in the Sutherland Estates. So our plan is to have 12 homes, and then we're going to build a micro daycare center so that they'll have a place to send their kids. And then again, building community with the families, having a place for their children, meeting up. There'll be a place for barbecues and just really being able to build community and seeing that maybe we're walking all of this together. We're not walking alone. We're walking together. You know, maybe they go, you know, back in the olden days, you used to get a cup of sugar from your neighbor. Yeah. And we don't do that anymore, you know, although I have done that with some people. But mostly you don't do that anymore. And that's really what builds community, and you feel like you're not alone. I know in my neighborhood, we always tell each other when somebody's going to be gone so that they watch our house. I mean, hey, if somebody has a moving truck, I'm not here, so please stop them. So anyways, yeah.
Yeah, building neighbor relationships is very different. Like I remember growing up, we knew all of our neighbors. My neighbor babysat me. We were three of us houses. We all had kids. All of us kids were within like 3 years of each other, and there's like 5 of us. So we always were at each other's houses. And now, like even in McPherson, I know my neighbors, but it's not that community feel like that I remember. Yeah. And I don't know if that's just because we're all really more protective of our privacy or how that is.
Technology there's
technology.
Yeah.
So I've always been curious about that.
And people work. You know, my mom didn't always work when I was growing up. She was home a lot. You know, she was the PTA mom or this mom or that mom. We don't have time. I mean, I've always worked full time.
Yeah,
I don't have time to be doing all that stuff. I talk to my neighbor over the fence sometimes. She's an incredible gardener, so I'm always peeking back there trying to see what she's done next. But I mean, or I talk to him when I get my mail. The guy across the street will run over and tell me something. But I mean, it's not the same as having a picnic or potluck. And that's what we want to try to build that back into our communities. How can we really bring people together? Because that's really the key, part of the key of getting people to move forward.
As you reflect on 17 years doing this work, how would you say your view of McPherson as a community has changed over that time?
Oh, that's a tricky. I might not have an answer. So I think that I really realize how much they care about each other. I think even more than I thought, sacrificially caring for one another. I don't know that I felt that before, but these churches came up with $50,000 to build one of these. And they provided all the labor. That's sacrifice. So I think for me, that would be what it is people are not only giving, but they're sacrificially giving. They're giving beyond maybe what would be a typical norm. I mean, I don't know of many churches across the world that is going to be willing to come in and build a tiny home village for families in need.
And I think the biggest part is the amount of different churches there are in McPherson. Vastly probably different beliefs, vastly different personalities, but they all somehow work together between the Mennonite church.
Yeah.
What's the one up north off of
Countryside?
Countryside.
Yeah, that's where I go to church.
Yeah.
You're a Covenanter?
I am.
I'm a Covenanter too.
Okay, see?
I was one. I'm a Methodist now.
You're a Methodist now. You grew up a Covenanter.
All right.
Yeah, and then we go to St. Paul right down the street. So it's just all these different churches. It's not just like all the Catholics came together or all the Methodists came together. It's literally all the churches in McPherson.
Yeah, it was really fun. So it was really amazing. I had one of the Mennonites, Holderman Mennonite, came up to me and said, "What does this do to build your faith?" And I said, "Well, it's incredible because of you guys coming together, the most conservative churches with the most liberal churches, and saying to each other, 'What can I do to help you?' Or what can I help you?" I can't. It's so hard to describe what it was like on site. You could just feel the energy and the love, and it was just incredible. It's an incredible story, really. It needs to be a movie. Wouldn't that be a cool movie? All right, if there's anybody out there who wants to make a movie, we're open to that.
How long did it take to build them?
A couple of years. We broke ground in 21. And I think we finished in 23, maybe a couple of years. We did 3, I think we did 3, and then 4. Okay. So, and a lot of that, the last 4 were a little more tricky because we didn't have a church specifically paying and adopting. So we had to kind of, although they did still help, but we had to go find those funds to finish building.
What other programs do you guys have?
So we have Brush Up Mac, which is my favorite program. That's April 19th in McPherson, if anybody lives in McPherson County. We go in to help our seniors with yard work. We've put roofs on. We've done grab bars in bathrooms. We do lots of wheelchair ramps. The goal of that program really is to help a senior stay in their home. You know, they do so much better. Unfortunately, going into a nursing home is not the funnest thing for a family. And so to be able to keep them in their home where they feel safe and comfortable, they know their neighbors usually, and so that's my favorite program that we have. And then all of our rest of our programs, I'm trying to think of what else we have because a lot of them are tied to the tenant-based rental assistance. We have an emergency solutions grant where we can actually keep somebody in their home before they get evicted. We have 41 partners in McPherson County that help us through. I mean, we're not mental health providers. We have to have a mental health provider. We're not attorneys. We have to have an attorney that partners with us. So it's all sort of interconnected. We do put on a housing conference. That's in. Oh yeah. So I'm trying to think in my brain.
It's in like September, October, isn't it?
Yeah, it's usually the end of September, first part of October, and so that is to bring awareness of housing. And then we bring in people. We've had people from Washington D.C. come in before. We've had representatives from some of our senators. We bring in people from Topeka to talk about housing and the programs that are available. Last year, we presented the housing study. We did a countywide housing study of every single community and what they need. We're getting ready to do that. We have a McPherson County Housing Task Force that is working to bring affordable housing to every single community in McPherson County.
Wow.
How do you do all of this and have another job?
I actually have another job after that too, but so
you see, you're delivering for Amazon.
Not yet. No, I know. No. So I have great people. And I think I have great that help me to keep everything organized. I'm the big picture person, right? So I have people that do like you have the queen. I'm not saying I'm a queen.
No, Gus is the big picture guy. And I'm the doer.
That's right. So, and that's what we have in the
having
office.
That relationship.
Yes, and so I have great people. Carolyn Moore is our director of supportive service, and Mary Driscoll, my mom, is our chief financial officer. We have Sherry Sparks, who is our case manager. I had to think. She just got married. I couldn't remember her name. And then we have Joey. What is Joey's last name? I have to think. And he does what you guys are doing here for our podcast. And we have a podcast called Housing for Good.
Yeah.
So we do that, and we bring on guest speakers from around the area to talk about what they do, and then we connect it back to housing. So everything really is connected to housing.
Have you heard people in your organization say, "We need video"? At Feely Creative, we develop videos to drive your marketing strategy. We are problem solvers, crafting messaging and visuals to achieve business goals. Whether you need to share your organization's identity, convey company culture, attract the right people to your team, or put your products on display, Feely will help you communicate effectively and get back to what you do best. Let's get creative. Feely Creative.
I mean, you think about it, you can't really do anything else until you have a stable home. So we've had the people from the senior center, and then we talk about what the housing looks like for seniors. We've had We had domestic violence. We've had somebody on from domestic violence twice. That was very, very informative. We talked about the wildfires in California and what that looks like, not only for the people that are having the wildfire, that their house just burned down, but what about the people that are still there that were homeless already? What happens to them? So we talk about national issues, international issues. It's all housing.
Where can they find your podcast at?
Housing for Good. Housing for Good is on everything, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbeam.
Okay.
It's everywhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about our first guest last episode and now you is that you each followed a parent's footsteps into a career. You said your mother's an appraiser as well. Did I get that right?
No, she followed me into a career.
Oh,
she followed
you.
So I've worked with my mother for 20 years. I love you, Mom. That's a really interesting dynamic. You have to learn to work it all out. And now my son, my youngest, is working with us as well. So it's definitely a family business. My husband, who had to drive me here today, by the way, because I had another
Is he
meeting.
just hanging out in the parking lot?
He is. He's out. He's in the somewhere upstairs. But anyway, but it's a family business, and so that makes it easier too, because we just kind of all help each other. It's just a normal way to be. But yeah, so no, she followed me. She was a chief financial officer at a couple big hospitals, and then she decided she wanted to retire, and I said, why don't you come work with me? Okay, perfect. And I think people actually told her, don't do it. Don't do it. She's crazy. I was like, that's okay, Mom. I promise I won't be. And then so she still works alongside me, and
Awesome.
Let's say a listener out there sees a problem in their community that they want to do something about. What's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody like that?
I would say to get a group of people together and talk about it, and then identify if what you're seeing is really a problem or if there's somebody else who's addressing it. I mean, maybe there is somebody addressing this and you just don't know about it. Do that first. And that's what we did. We could not find anybody in McPherson County addressing what we were seeing. Not that they didn't want to. A lot of things had happened. They had done a housing study before, and then it just sat on the shelf, and they were doing this and that and all these things, and nothing seemed to work. So we knew that when we were doing McPherson Housing Coalition, when we developed that there was nobody else doing it. And then we got people together. So it wasn't just me. I mean, it's great and all, but it wasn't just me. It was other people who had a passion as well.
Well, I find your story just remarkable. Just, that not only have you done something amazing, but you're already taking the next step and you're trying to think of other things you can do to make your community better. I'm proud to share a state with you.
What is the next step after Southern Estates are finished and your micro daycare?
So we are looking at some funding that we don't know if what's going to happen now with what's going on politically, but we are trying to build some affordable homes for first-time home buyers. So we literally will take people, and we've done that before. We partner with McPherson High School. They don't build homes anymore, but they built a home for us. We were able to buy it, get it to moved it on site, and then we had a single mom with 4 kids. We got her a loan through Real Development, and then she bought that house. And I think at the time her house payment was like less than $500.
Oh, wow.
Which was less than the rent she was paying. She got this 30-year loan, great interest rate. And I have absolutely seen her family flourish. And I won't say names, but she knows who she is. Yeah. And I'm just incredible what she's done with her life. And we did that twice with home ownership. So home ownership is a game changer.
It is.
It is a game changer.
Like, I remember I moved to McPherson in February of 2020. And when I was looking for a house, I was just looking for a rental because it was just me and my 2 cats at that time. Like, just me and my 2 cats. I just needed a little space, like, that we could call home. And one, rent is really high in McPherson because of all the industry that we have. And 2, finding anything under like $150,000 for just a single person to buy was crazy.
Yeah, it
was so hard. We actually ended up buying a rental from a realtor / landlord in town because we just happened to know a realtor that knew that she wanted to start getting rid of some of her rentals. She's like, well, this one's actually empty right now. So you can either pay $900 in rent or you can pay $900 in a mortgage. I'm like, well,
Exactly.
obviously I'm going to do the mortgage.
Right. And that's
So-
exactly, my son came home from college and he's like, what am I going to do now, Mom? I said, well, just live in the basement. We'll figure this out. It took us a year to find him a house.
It's crazy.
And but we had contacts. I have a friend who flips houses. He goes, I have this house. I think it'd be perfect. It was actually not a bad it's in a great neighborhood, but it needs a lot of work. Do you think this would work for him? And I was like, so we went and looked at it and put an offer in that day.
Yeah.
But we only found out about it because I knew somebody. Nobody else got an opportunity for it.
That's the only reason we're in the house that we're in now is because Milton knew the realtor and we got in there before it hit the market.
Yeah.
Because it's just so competitive in McPherson.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Do you have any questions for us at all?
No, this was so awesome. I'm honored to be here today.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
love
Thank
it.
you
I
for
love
reaching
it.
out.
I watched your other shows and they're incredible. So I would
thank
tell
you.
people to watch this Ask a Kansan because they do a great job.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Thanks for that flattery.
Yeah.
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All
Yeah.
right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to that interview with Chris. It's fascinating how much passion she has poured into the McPherson Housing Coalition and just the community of McPherson, and really trying to push out this kind of message to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think it's always neat to see somebody that's doing entrepreneurial things in the world and not necessarily in a business sense. Like she's taking her energy for creating something into helping people, which is remarkable and clearly is having an impact that will be, something to be remembered and something that will leave a lasting impact.
Yeah. And for those who want to learn more, it's just McPhersonHousingCoalition.org. Or you can check out their podcast, Housing for Good. And they have 32 episodes out. And they're about 15 to 30 minutes long. They're really good short listens if you have a commute. And they have a variety of guests. So we'll make sure to link that in all of our social media and summaries and stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about Ask a Kansan, visit us on our website. It is up, askakansan.com. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. What else did I miss? LinkedIn. If you're curious on joining us on the podcast, reach out to us on any of those platforms or email us at info@feelycreative.com.
And we're always looking for guests. So if you know of somebody that you think would be a good guest on Ask a Kansan, please reach out. Yeah. And special thanks to our guest today, obviously Chris, and her husband who drove her up here today.
Her chauffeur today.
Thanks to Skylar Nelson, our producer, Marilyn Shippey, our technical director, the rest of the team here at Feely, and to Everyday Lights for the use of our theme song, Horse Thief Canyon.
Yeah, and join us next time. We're going to start trying to get episodes out here monthly and then kind of bi-weekly. So just keep an eye on when those come out.
Thanks. See ya.